Welcome to the Breakfast for Dispute Resolvers, co-sponsored by the Association for Conflict Resolution of Greater New York and the City University of New York Dispute Resolution Center at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I'm Maria Volpe. I'm a professor at John Jay and director of the Dispute Resolution Center. Since 9/11, these breakfasts have been held on the first Thursday of each month at John Jay College. This breakfast is number 224. It takes a village every month to organize these breakfasts, and I'm so delighted to be part of a wonderful team consisting of Julie Denny, Chuck Newman, Matthew Latimer, and Nikki Borofsky. The coronavirus pandemic has signaled a tipping point for many things, including the mediation field. Most of us are accustomed to having been trained in person, conducting sessions in person, and being the person who's the bridge builder, the person who brings people together, the person who helps people to have a difficult conversation by being physically present. This morning, we are going to focus on mediating in a virtual world. And we're so lucky to have with us Alex Yaroslavsky, a dear friend and colleague who will lead the discussion. Before I turn this over to Julie to formally introduce Alex, I wanted to share that we lost two individuals who have been a part of the breakfasts and our listserv. Professor William Helmreich, a distinguished professor at City College, who was also our November speaker and talked about his ethnographic research about walking in the streets of New York City. And Susan Engram, a family and divorce mediator. Both of these losses are a stark reminder to all of us to take good care, wash your hands, and maintain physical distance. And now, I'm delighted to turn this over to Julie, as we do every month, to introduce our speaker. Julie.
Thank you, Maria. We are thrilled to have Alex, who's an old friend of New York City mediators, running this particular breakfast. I'm going to give you a very brief introduction of Alex and then turn it over to him because he's a font of knowledge, and we all need it since we can't meet face-to-face these days. Alex is an executive coach. He's got more than 20 years of experience coaching, teaching, mediating in a lot of different industries. He coaches senior leaders in developing internal brands, building coalitions, working with competitors, managing shifting roles, as well as managing career transitions. You're going to be in great demand, Alex, I suspect, with the COVID repercussions. He holds a master's degree in industrial and labor relations from Cornell and a bachelor's degree in marketing and business from NYU's Stern School of Business. He sits on a number of mediation panels, FINRA and the New York State Supreme Court Commercial Division, the CCRB, the Night Club. These are all panels of mediators that many of us in the New York area are familiar with. He's not only a highly qualified mediator and coach, he happens to be a technical guru. And that's why we brought him on today, to help us in this new Zoom world figure out the niceties of this technology as dispute resolvers. So there will be, I noticed one comment was, I wanted to hear about mediation, not about Zoom. I suspect that the focus is on Zoom, but in the context of mediation and dispute resolution. So he's highly qualified. We're thrilled he's here. Alex, take it away.
Thank you, Julie, very much. And good morning, everyone. Thank you. Let me share my screen with you. and you should all be able to see the, let's see. Yeah, you should, tell me if you're all able to see the screen I'm sharing that with a slide that says mediating in a virtual world. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So let's begin. And to answer the question from the person who asked, yes, we'll be talking about mediation broadly and Zoom specifically. So let's see. Okay, so we don't need this slide anymore. Julie, I think, introduced me well enough. Thank you very much, Julie. I know many of you from years in the field, and I do arbitration, mediation, coaching, and consulting. So let's begin actually with a poll. Now, normally these things are done at the beginning when we ask people where they're from. But now with the use of technology, we can demonstrate it a little bit by asking you to self-identify and answer 2 questions. So I'm going to launch the poll now. And now those of you certainly who have video should be able to see it, and you should be able to respond where you live and work, and your professional affiliation. And where you live and work, you only have one choice. Presumably that's either you're here or there, but your professional affiliation, you can choose more than one. And so I'll just take a minute to ask you to fill out both, and then we have a sense of where our guests are from.
Alex, this is Rebecca Ratliff. Can you hear me?
I can, Rebecca.
Hi, good morning. I'm in Atlanta and I'm hitting obviously east of Mississippi, but I'm not able to submit. Are you going to advance us to the next question, or am I supposed to be
No,
able to
there's
submit?
if you scroll
Second
down,
question.
you'll be able to
Oh.
see it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alex, can you tell us how to set up the poll?
Setting up the poll, you can ask me as a question later. Hold that question and I'll walk you through it if we have time. Okay. So we have, I can see that we have 200 of 305 people who've submitted answers so far.
I'm on an iPad and I don't see how to answer the poll.
Did you see the poll come up?
do it.
It just says poll on my screen. There's nothing else.
And if you press it, you don't see a window that came up? I'm not sure. I don't have an iPad, so I can't tell what it looks like.
I'm on my iPhone and it came up. You had to scroll, but then I hit a thing and it closed it. Now I can't finish it.
Oh,
So it's closed.
And I'm on a computer and it just has the red poll screen.
Maybe it timed out.
all right.
I could
So-
answer, but I could not submit.
No
Yeah,
problem.
that's what happened, and then it went to this
I
poll.
think if you scroll to the bottom, you should be able to do that. Okay.
So the poll has only 2 questions, right?
So yeah, what I'll ask you to do actually, if you could, is mute your phones now. Just I want to avoid crosstalk, and I will share the results right now. And we have enough of data to see where people are from. So we have at this point 239. So I will share the results. Oh, and it's looks like I cannot share the results. I'm wondering why that is. Hang on one second. Well, Zoom is somehow preventing me from sharing the results, but I can tell you that 77% of the people are from the metro New York area, followed by east of Mississippi 15%, and a few west of Mississippi, some from Europe. We have a few people from Africa. And in terms of professional affiliation, we have a lot of, we have 19% arbitrators, 43% attorneys, 10% coaches, 3% HR professionals, 65% mediators, and a few ombuds, teachers, trainers, students, and others. So let me move on, if I may, to the presentation to give you some insights into mediating in the virtual world. So my goal for today is to give you a little bit of the big picture of what's happening. Second, sorry, here we go. The pros and cons, best practices, and some tools, including Zoom. So the big picture is simple. Technology has matured. There are more tech native people in the workforce. there's a huge cultural shift now with, oh, you can mute yourselves, please. Let me just do that. Hang on 1 second. Okay. And so there are cultural shifts with COVID-19 that have made it more permissible now to do things remotely and even more necessary. And so the future is definitely going to be more virtual. With this movement to more virtual, there are some pros and cons. So in the real world, there are certain advantages. For example, people have said to me when I was doing this talk that you can get more of a sense of a person in the real world. You can say hello, you can shake their hand, or used to be able to do that. You can read their body language. It's a more intimate setting, especially for mediators who make their living doing this sort of work. And there are also some informal opportunities for trust building, for informal negotiation. You walk over to the bagel table, you chat up the person or the attorney, and you build some trust. And so that piece is lost with the virtual work that we might be doing soon. There are also higher barriers to exit. So, there are the mediators who say, I will be the last person to be dragged out of this room kicking and screaming. You're here, you've made it all the way here, you're not gonna wanna come back here, let's do this deal. And so in the virtual world, it's easier to say, not now, click, and we'll reconvene. And so that's true. But in the virtual world, you also have more advantages. You can work remotely. So we see now we have over 300 people today at the breakfast, whereas for people to come physically into New York, it's more difficult, especially for people who live on the West Coast or in Europe or in Africa. So, so there's a lot more flexibility to reach more people. On the accessibility piece, it's also easier for people with disabilities to access mediation and a mediator in this virtual world. And of course, there's a piece of safety. Safety sometimes in the biological sense, as in now, and safety could be physical safety if you're doing divorce mediation and the issue is issues are there are hot and people don't want to be in the same room. It can provide just a measure of distance, and that might be helpful to actually have a good outcome in a mediation. You also have low overhead. Low overhead in terms of just paying for an office and in terms of travel time. So the idea of trying a mediation, it's the inverse of high barriers to exit. It's easier to say to a person, let's just try the mediation. Log in, here's the link, and if it doesn't work, you have these other avenues that you can pursue. So I think it would make people more likely to sign up to give this a try. And of course, with virtual mediation, you have more tools. You can share screens like we're doing now. You can have easier scheduling that I'll talk about. You have easier document processing, and you can have easier payment processing. So with that, of course, we have some growing pains. So for the mediator, there's a change. It's a change of doing business. It's a change of thinking of your practice. It's a change of thinking of how to manage the process. There's also the infrastructure and software you need, and we'll talk about some of that today. And then there's the learning curve of using the software and what happens if something goes wrong. For the parties, there's also change. There is, they have to figure out now how to show up, how to download their infrastructure and software. And there's a little bit of maybe loss of control, whereas before, they come in, and so there's a sense of familiarity. I've been in a waiting room before. I kind of know what it's like, maybe if my mediator has prepared me. Now I'm clicking some buttons, and all of a sudden I appear on the screen, plus I have all these issues, plus I can't mute myself, or I think I'm speaking, but I was just muted. So there's a sense of that discomfort that I think we'll deal with until we can become comfortable with technology, like with any technology before. The one new consideration, I think, for virtual mediators is who is in the room. So in the in real life situation, who's in the room. It's very unlikely that a person will come in and surreptitiously have an earpiece from their lawyer telling them what to say. But in the virtual world, it is possible for someone to be on camera, and then there could be someone else off camera listening in, holding a notepad, etc. And so there are these considerations that need to be taken into account and dealt with, and we'll talk a little bit about them, of how to mitigate this. So it's a real reality. It's not a reason not to do a virtual mediation, but it's just something to think about, that you only have a narrow view of the person you're dealing with. So before I go on to best practices, I want to see if there are questions that people have that would be helpful to answer now. I'll take a few minutes and then I'll move on if there are no questions. Nikki, Maria, does anyone have any questions they want to float to me? Nope, I see no. Good.
Not in the chat yet.
Great. Okay.
I did send one.
Sorry?
I did. This is Patricia DeGare.
Oh, Patricia, yes. What is your question?
I put a question out with when you discussed disability, you did not mention the hearing impaired nor the sighted impaired.
Yeah. So for people who are hearing impaired, Zoom offers actually a way to do closed captioning. So it is possible to do that. It actually turns out that I could do this even on my presentation today. I'm not doing it because I think it may be distracting, but if you see, I just turned it on and you can see that Google, this is not Zoom, but Google captures my text and displays it in real time. I don't know what Zoom's feature is for this, but I know they have a closed capture option, and that might require someone typing, perhaps, or you could do something like this. Thank you for that question. Okay, so let's move on to best practices. So in this, I'll talk about these areas: anticipatory guidance, appearance, lighting and background, some noise issues, and your desktop and notifications. So one of the ways to make your clients comfortable with mediation or any new process is to follow the rule of the airlines. You know, we remember not too long ago, we flew often and we saw cabin crew give us these presentations and we got used to them, right? We know what that means. Go here and put on your life vest and make sure you put on your own mask before helping someone else, etc. And what they're doing is giving you anticipatory guidance of how to be a good passenger, how to deal with the airplane as a technology, what to expect, when to expect it, right? Should we experience cabin pressure, your oxygen masks will drop from the ceiling, etc. What the rules of the road are, as in like no smoking, right? Federal offense. And just in case plan B, you got your cushions for your flotation device and so on. And it would really be helpful for mediators to give a document of some sort to your clients, letting them know what it will be like to mediate virtually. And here I've compiled some of these. So to me, they fall into three areas: technical, legal, mediation, and process. And I'll just mention them briefly, and you're welcome to create your own document for what that will look like. So on the technical side, you want to let them know what the hardware is. Do they need to have a computer? Do they need to have a fast computer? Does it matter if they have a phone? Can they do it on an iPad? What the applications they will need, like Zoom or maybe DocuSign. Their internet connection, right? So they'll need a good Wi-Fi connection. Some security issues, as in don't use public spaces and Wi-Fi. Excuse me. I thought I muted my phone, but I guess not. Okay. To have them log in early and test their system, and to have a backup plan. So if something doesn't work, what to do. On the legal piece, you want to let them know what the applicable legal requirements might be in your state. Typical confidentiality agreement. Add to that a privacy agreement, as in no recording, You will not record the Zoom session, and they shouldn't record anything. Now, can they record something? Sure, but they can also, in a real world, bring in a video, their phone and record, put it in their pocket. They can wear glasses with a camera that you won't see. So there are people, if they want to disobey the rules and break your rules, they can. They can also do it in the virtual world. And we have remedies for these things. You also want to talk about transparency, as in no eavesdroppers. That's how you deal with the issue of who's in the room. In the real world, that's not necessary because you see who's in the room. But in the virtual world, you probably want to have some language talking about transparency, that you want to make sure that everyone knows who's listening, and then whoever is not there isn't listening. And then there are some process issues. So there's the fact that you will be in a waiting room. So when we first start, you will be in this area where you were today until Nikki admitted you to the main room. Talk about focus and interruptions, as in silence your phones, and focus for the next 2 or so hours on this mediation. Talk about some etiquette, as in one person speaks at a time. Now, of course, you have the ability to mute them and so on, but you don't want to do that. That's disempowering to them. So what you want to do is have people behave and mute themselves, unmute themselves, etc. And you also have, just as an added feature, a backup channel. So you could have one person speaking and another person vehemently disagreeing, and they do that by sending you a chat message. And as the mediator, you now have this piece of information you can deal with without making the other person feel interrupted. You also want to talk to them about screen sharing and what it means, document sharing, and breakout rooms for caucus. And I don't think we can demonstrate the breakout rooms today because of the size of the audience. Zoom has a maximum limit, I think, of 50 rooms and 200 people, and we are way over that. But in a mediation context, you definitely have that. And I'll show you a video later on of how to set up these breakout rooms. So let me pause now if people have questions. Nikki, Maria, any questions that people have?
Alex, there was a question from Kira about how to handle confidentiality when others may be listening off camera or elsewhere. I know you, that was one of the things you mentioned, but it was a particular question that also came up.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, so the way you do it is typically you have people sign a confidentiality agreement that they agree that this is a private conversation, it's not discoverable, nothing they present can be held against them, nothing they hear should be divulged, and it holds the same in the virtual context. No difference, other than this idea of no recording and no eavesdroppers, and they have to agree to that.
James Kinney has raised his hand.
Yes, you can unmute yourself and ask the question, please. Nope. Okay.
Yes, no, good morning, I'm here. I had a little difficulty unmuting. Good morning, everyone. Alex, curious about backup plan. I've been in a lot of Zoom meetings over the last month. Sometimes folks are on a computer and a handheld device. I think there's some problems with audio at different times.
Yep.
But another part of the backup plan, I'm curious, as a mediator, would I have, say, set up the mediation on my computer and maybe have a laptop available in case I'm having problems with the computer? I can shift to the next device if needed. Is
Absolutely.
that the thinking behind backup plan?
So there are a couple of them. You should definitely, and I have a slide on this, you should have redundancies for sure. And the other backup plan is if all else fails. So what happens if, let's say, Wi-Fi goes out? Someone's digging a trench outside your office and all internet is lost. What do they do? A good backup plan is try logging in once, and if you can't, then call me on my cell number. As long as people know what to do, they're calm. It's only when you don't tell them and then something happens and then everyone's in a panic. What do I do next? So let them know what to do next and they'll just do it. And the worst comes to worst is you reschedule the mediation by phone. Thank you for the question. So let me proceed.
Sorry, Alex, can I don't have one of these hands up things on my phone.
Oh, sure.
But I wanted to, along those lines, what if the meeting room is locked and your computer dies or breaks or you lose internet and then you want to switch to your iPhone because you can use cell service? Can you get in if you had joined before?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep, sure thing. And I've done this. I have joined as myself onto different devices because a camera on my phone works better than the camera on my old laptop. And so I projected my camera from that, and I didn't project the image from my desktop, or my laptop, and that worked just fine. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about appearance. And I have some hot links in this presentation. So I want to play for you. And can you see the YouTube that's about to play?
A small finger, a worm,
a lamppost,
tiny sword,
a walking.
So let's see. I'm gonna wait for the ad to. YouTube is being very crafty now. They make you listen to this whole thing.
But I believe in democracy. So tonight I have decided not to wear a suit from the waist down.
Okay, that's enough. So that's Stephen Colbert, the day before yesterday on national television, not wearing pants. So granted, it was late night, but you get the point that in this modern age, you want to be dressed professionally, at least from the waist up, to make a good impression on your clients. But what is below the table and below the camera is your choice. I can tell you today, just because of the size of the audience, I am wearing pants as I'm presenting this.
Thank you, Alex.
Yes.
As a woman, for women, you can wear your PJs, just have a lovely scarf and drape it around you. Lovely big scarf.
Perfect.
No one sees below that.
Perfect. And in that case, avoid getting up. If you just be aware, and we'll talk more about the importance of being conscious of the camera. So next, I want to talk about lighting. And so hopefully you can see me today because I have a window here with indirect light. And I also have a light that is on my other side. When I have work later in the day, you can see the change, if you can see subtly, that I am being lit from this other side where I don't have a window. And so I'm thoughtful about my lighting when I do this because I want to avoid some of these bad lighting situations of either being very brightly lit or being backlit, which is really bad. You look like you're in the witness protection program. Or if you don't have good lighting and you look blue because the blue screen of the monitor lights you up. So that's something that we want to avoid, and I will talk later about what gear you might need for that. So let's talk about background a little bit. Some of you have asked this, and you can definitely have different backgrounds. So I want to show you this picture, okay? And if this were your mediator, you might have second thoughts unless you were mediating an astrophysics dispute. So this person is a little bit spacey, a little bit grainy, not particularly realistic. You also don't want to have a real background of your law office where all your client files are located, because it's not a particularly calming view from the person watching. On the other hand, take a look at this picture, right? Where the person has a nice background and looks pretty relaxed. And here's an example of a real office setup that you can rent for, if you drum roll please. And so look, if you wanted to download this image or the complete bundle, it would only be about $30. So think about how much you're paying for your current physical office and compare that with the nice setup you can have for 30 bucks. And if some of you are wondering whether I have my own office here, I can tell you that this is a virtual background, and this is what it looks like, let's see, when I have nothing. So I like my virtual background, and I actually downloaded mine from the internet, and you can do the same. So let me click here and we'll move on. Okay, ambient noise.
Can you explain how, please?
How to do it? Yes. So you have to download the desktop client for your Zoom account, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And it is only in that desktop client that you can upload new images. The images should just be high quality, and they can be any image. You can upload a photo of yours as long as it's high quality and it looks nice. If it's low quality, it'll look like the space guy. And if your computer is slow, then your computer will have a problem processing that background. So you may be better off without it. If I use my old laptop to do this, you would see me a lot more in a lot more grainy way. It wouldn't look nice. I wouldn't do it. But you can experiment with that.
Alex,
So
do you want to know that people have raised their hands, or you want to
Oh, yeah,
take questions
sure.
in a
Yes.
minute?
So
Eric Runbacon raised his hand.
Yeah, okay. Eric?
Yeah, hi. I was interested in knowing about what the problem is with Wi-Fi. Should we be using only hardwired computers on this?
No, not necessarily. When you say problem with Wi-Fi, are you referring to the security issue that I mentioned?
Yes.
Okay, so that's just a warning for clients. So for you, you want to be on a private connection. You definitely don't want to be doing mediations from a Starbucks, even if you can get a good background. And you want to advise your clients to also not use Starbucks or public Wi-Fi because it's not secure. So if someone's, let me just mute everyone. Should I? Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting some background.
Folks, if you, I'll ask one of my co-hosts if you could just mute everyone, please. So if you have a situation where someone's transferring files and you have a hacker and it's the Wi-Fi is not secure, there's a potential of that information leaking out. The chance of that is small, but just as a precaution, you want to advise your clients to have a secure connection. And Zoom is a secure platform. There are other secure platforms. I'll mention them as well. But you want to make sure that you're using a sharing program that is security compliant, so it can't be hacked.
Thank you. That's what I was asking. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, other questions?
So Alex, just a comment. What we were talking about before, if you're in a situation where you absolutely have to mediate or conduct your Zoom conference in a public environment, but you might want to download or have on your computer, and you have to make sure everybody who's participating has this as well, is something called a virtual private network, also known as a VPN.
Yes.
It's way beyond the scope of this discussion, but if you have that set up, that's a possible workaround in a situation where you have no other choice but to use public Wi-Fi or a public resource.
Yes, thank you, Elon. Yes, so yes, so technically you can make these things happen, but I think if you're launching a mediation practice, that would not be the first thing I would worry about. I would worry about these other things, and it's just easier to tell your clients to get a private connection. And if your clients can set up a VPN, it's not really hard to do, you just have to know how to do it, then you have some sophisticated clients. Thank you, Elon. Fair, very fair point. Okay, ambient noise. I don't know if you remember Robert Kelly. You might better remember him thusly.
If you're serious about your business, you need to build systems.
So I won't go through this. YouTube is making us watch too many commercials, but you may remember the BBC interview where he was giving an he was talking about the, I think, political situation in South Korea, while his toddlers showed up in the room, and his wife made this pro move. I have a screenshot of it, trying to rescue him from his kids. So you want to avoid these types of noise disruptions. So think about when you're doing a mediation about privacy, and think about any colleagues if you're sharing an office, family, children, or pets. And think about how that might affect your mediation stance. It's not the end of the world, and it's kind of funny, but in terms of best practices, you want to be thinking about that noise issue. Next is desktop. So clean your desktop. You see, you want to go from this busy one where it has your client names and all kinds of documents and all kinds of agreements that someone can either read or take a picture of, and it's just none of their business. And have a clean, serene desktop where there's really nothing to look at. It's a clean surface from which you can work. Similarly, on your browser, if you have a lot of toolbars or a lot of bookmarks, you want to get rid of them and hide them, and there are ways of doing that. We won't talk about how today, but you can definitely look that up on Google, and so that your browser, the browser you're sharing, is a clean browser. And you can see that I've done my best to do that, where I've maximized the area for viewing as a result. Next, notifications, including phone. As you can see, mine rang, even though I thought I put don't disturb, and I didn't realize that don't disturb doesn't mean it won't give me phone calls. So Facebook, your Gmail, your Outlook, your Yahoo, your Messenger, your music, your WhatsApp, your Slack, your phone, and others. Mute them, remove them, and you will be surprised, actually, despite all your efforts, how many of them will pop up until you realize, oh yes, I forgot that one. So you want to just make sure that they don't interrupt your setting. One more thing about sharing screens. There are two ways in which you can share screens. You can share the physical screen of your monitor so that anything that pops up on that monitor will be visible, or you can share the projection of the application, in which case only that application will be shown. So the way that I displayed my screen today is I'm only showing you the presentation itself, not what's on my second monitor. And that's another way, just another safeguard in case I get a notification, you won't see it because it's not part of that application. But if I was sharing a monitor and the notification came up on that, then you would have seen it. So this is where we're talking about the Department of Redundancy department. You want to have a belt and suspenders strategy of having a second laptop, having a second microphone and earpiece, which I have here. You want to have some batteries in case you have a keyboard, for example, that I have right now. It's a battery operated keyboard. It's a Bluetooth keyboard. So one day my batteries will run out. I don't want that day to come right now. And you also want to have your Netgear label or maybe a picture of it in place in case something happens and you don't want to be diving underneath your desk in the middle of a mediation looking for your router. So all those things you want to make a list of, and you'll probably get 80%, 90% there, and then something will happen eventually, and then you will add that 95th% onto your list. And also mind your audio and video. When your light is on, you are on the air. And there have been some memes going around the internet lately of epic fails on around that. I won't share them with you at this early hour, but if anyone is interested in Googling Jennifer Zoom fail, do so after this presentation and you will see what I mean.
Alex, it's Chuck. I wonder, yeah, this might be the perfect moment to pass along a question from Henry Kolonovsky.
Sure.
Over the last 3 or 4 days, there've been a lot of backlash about Zoom. Any alternatives? As an example, there's a headline that Elon Musk's Spacex bans Zoom because of privacy concerns.
Yes. So great question, Henry. I will actually talk about that. I have some slides a little bit further in the deck that'll speak exactly to that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Joe Siegel also had his hand raised, but I can't tell what that was about.
Okay. Joe, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Oh, I was.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I had a question. It goes back a little earlier when you were talking about the opportunity to check your chat box to see if one of the parties has something they want to let you know kind of behind the scenes while you're doing the mediation. I find it very hard to check my chat box while I'm engaging visually with people. And I wonder if you have any tips about how to do that.
Yeah, some of it is just practice. And it's, for me, it's arranging my screen in such a way that I don't have to click too much. So I have my, my screen here that I'm looking at. I might have a screen here, which you'll see that I'm looking over here. And then my chat box is on my right. So once I have my dashboard set up and I'm comfortable with it and my eye knows where to go, it's much more comfortable. So I would just say practice on. You can practice with a friend, just so if you ask them to give you a half hour, so you can play with that a little bit. Great question. Nikki, did you want to ask a question? Okay. Okay.
No, you're going to get to it later, so I'll hold for them.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some tools, including Zoom, and then in that Zoom discussion, we'll answer Henry's question as well. So I want to share with you some of my digital toolbox of the kinds of things I do, and then we'll talk about some infrastructure issues, and then your virtual world gear, and then we'll get to Zoom as well. So here's my digital toolbox, and these are apps that I use a lot. So I'm a fan of Gmail. I like them because it's free, it's unlimited storage, it plays well with many things. There are many integrations for it. It has a calendar, which I also use, which also integrates with everything. And also I use Google Drive and backup and sync for handling my files, and I'll show you that in a little bit, as well as Mixmax, Acuity, and of course, Zoom. Just fair warning, if as I talk about some of these things and you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And we might have some topics like Mixmax and Acuity that we might not be able to get to as a result. But I'd rather cover your questions than just cover the entire tool set, because I have more that I didn't put in.
Alex, I see a hand up from Lou Blanchard. Lou,
Okay.
do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. You were talking about moving your banner, your chat box over. How do you move the bottom banner? Because mine is at the bottom.
It depends on your setup, if you have an iOS or you have Windows, and it also depends on whether you've maximized your screen or not. So it's hard for me to answer specifically, but
Okay.
I would say just say tweak with that. Yeah, play with that and see if you can tweak it. Okay, what I'm going to do is also lower. Oh, there we go. Yep, thank you. So Google Drive. Google Drive is available for the Mac. It's available for the PC. And if you see, I have hot links here so that you can actually, if you download this deck, you'll be able to go there and download it if you like. I have that for the PC as well. And so what that does, it synchronizes my files with my desktop and the cloud. So on my left, you can see that I just took a snapshot of my files on my computer drive, academic, it's business, etc. And then you can books, and then you can see that replicated at the bottom on the cloud. It's the exact same folder structure because it synchronizes automatically. As soon as I make a change in my Word document, that document is reflected and uploaded up to the cloud. And then on my right side, you can see the details of one of those folders where I have 4 documents that look like they typically would look on a desktop. And those documents are also synchronized to my cloud. And what that allows me to do is work on either laptop. I have my backup laptop or my primary laptop. I can do it at home. I can do it anywhere. And as long as my laptop has the same Word software, I am independent of my first laptop should it break. And so I find that very helpful, and it gives me a lot of peace of mind to know that if something should happen, all I have to do is get it into the laptop, download, backup, and sync, log in, and everything will come down.
Alex, Sabia has a question.
Yeah.
Sabia?
Alex, the same can be achieved for those who use Office 365 with OneDrive. I'm
sure. Yeah, so I'm just sharing, this is my setup, and if you have OneDrive, I don't use it very much, but it's just as good. So if you're a Microsoft person, you can do the same thing.
Is there anything wrong with Dropbox? Because I use Dropbox.
Nothing wrong with Dropbox. I'm just sharing my tools. I have nothing against it. Some people say it's not as secure as some other repositories, but unless you're dealing with very confidential financial information, I think, and if you have good, strong passwords, I think it's perfectly fine. And I actually have Dropbox as well. I just don't use it as part of my business. I use it to share files with people who have Dropbox.
Sabia?
Yes, Alex, 2 questions. My cell phone was on silent, but it rang on my computer just now.
Yep.
That was one issue. And with that, the slideshow disappeared and came back eventually. So that was my first question. What do I do so that it doesn't ring on the computer?
Do you have an iPhone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not an I person, so I don't know. I imagine there's a way of silencing that. I think Apple's doing you a favor by letting you know you have a call. But I don't know what your setting would be to silence that.
All right,
I'm just glad you're back with us.
The second question is that with your slideshow up on the screen, on the right side, the photo gallery of the participants is showing up vertically, and it's blocking off some of the script on the slide.
I see. I think you could probably adjust for that by minimizing that strip. At least I have it on my view.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Great. Okay. So let's talk about document processing a little bit. So you have 2 options there, at least. There are others, but you have at least 2. One is Adobe Sign, that is $15 a month. And the other is DocuSign, which is about $25. And I also have a link here to Gartner's comparison of the 2. So you are free to go and check it out and see if you, I'm just going to close these, as you can compare the 2. I like Adobe Sign. It's just as good as DocuSign, but DocuSign is more popular. So I think Adobe is later to the market. For other software, this is more for lawyers, but not necessarily. So I have other links for you about a paperless law office as well as credit card processing. There are many credit card processors that you can use to send out bills electronically without having to do the old invoice that you then email and then wait for it to be paid. I have a link for that, but it is too deep a topic for today. So I'm just letting you know that that's something you might want to consider to get paid faster and easier. So let's move on to infrastructure. And so this is, I don't know if any of you have done this, but I would recommend it. If you click on Google and you go to Speedtest, you can actually measure, don't do it right now, but you can measure the speed of your connection. And you can see this morning we're doing okay, we're early enough, so my speed is pretty good. You only need 25 megabits per second for one video call. So if you're living in a studio and you don't have anyone else in your space, then 25 megabits is fine for one Zoom call. So when your phone company or your cable company tries to offer you 300 megabits per second for maximum speed, that might be overkill. On the other hand, if you're in an office and you share that with 3 coworkers who have Zoom calls at the same time, or you're in a house where you have family members who are streaming Netflix and someone else has their own Zoom session, etc., then you want to be thinking about 25 megabits per person at the same time. So you want to have, this gives you a kind of an order of magnitude sense of how much bandwidth you need to be able to do video conferencing. Let's move on to gear. So for a video conferencing, you want to have your laptop, you want to have your earbuds, you want to have a diffused light source. And so I'm going to click on this and I'll give you a sense of how much that costs. It's about $50, not that much of an investment for good lighting. And that'll make the difference between you, I'm going to close that, between you being able to be seen as sort of front lit as you want to be seen, as opposed to being backlit or being subject to the sun moving, etc. So I would highly recommend investing in something like that. You also want to have a second monitor. I think it makes it easier to have Zoom calls that way, and a good high definition camera, which also runs, if you don't already have one, at around $70. That's your investment. Just a little note about earbuds. I like to have mine wired, not wireless, because that's my backup, so that if something happens, I'm able to still connect without worrying about a charge. And I also like to have only one in my ear with a mic hanging here, as opposed to both, because that allows me to hear the environment outside and not lean in and yell too much into the microphone if I can't hear myself talk. So this is just an example. This is a tweet that Savannah Guthrie of NBC News put out on March 18th. She was doing, again, a nationally televised show from her basement. And this is, the foot is that of her husband / producer in that basement. And if you look at his technology, what does he have? A laptop, a couple of screens. Of course, there's an expensive camera because that's for a national broadcast. But if you take a look, she has 4 light sources. She has 2 lights from this direction, a light that shines on her this way, and a light from the back that shines on her from the back. So that's how important lighting is. On the other hand, it looks like she's doing the show barefoot. So while she's wearing pants, it stopped there. So you can see that's not that big a deal. Whatever the camera doesn't see, even on national television, but you want to be lit well. Okay, I'm going to pause here before I go to the next section, talk about mediating with Zoom for any questions. I see we have one.
Art Eagle raised his hand.
Yep.
Bart, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just did. Thanks. Thanks, Chuck, and thanks, Alex. Alex, a while ago, you talked about having a clean desktop and having your browser clean as well. I've been on Zoom calls now for more hours in time than I'd like to think over the last couple of weeks. My desktop and my browser doesn't, to my knowledge, doesn't appear to anyone who is participating on the call, and I'm not seeing anyone else's. So why is that important? How does that become an issue?
Only if you happen to click when you share your screen, I'm going to share my desktop. And if you do it before you maximize your screen, then people will see the desktop in its native form before you cover it with something. So if you always maximize your screen first and then only share that screen, it may not be an issue. But as a best practice, I recommend it because my bet is one time something will happen and people will see your native screen. I've seen plenty of them. So that's best practice.
Susanna Mancini raised her hand.
Yes, hi, Alex. Good morning. I have a question. How do you check yourself? I hope it's not a dumb question, but how do you check yourself on your appearance, the lighting, before you go on the air, so to speak?
Yeah, actually, a great question. And Zoom does that for you. When you log on, Zoom gives you a little preview window of what you look like on camera before you join a call. And if you're running a Zoom meeting, then just start the meeting a few minutes before anyone comes in, set them up so that they have to join in the waiting area, so you control when they come in, like we have today. And then you have the room to yourself, and you can look at yourself, you can adjust your screen, you can adjust your lighting, and you could make sure that you look the way you want before admitting your participants.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. So I'm going to move forward now with mediating with Zoom. We'll talk about issues and features, talk about what's under the hood, and then I'll answer questions that you might have. So before we talk about Zoom, I just want to let you know that while I like it, I am not a Zoom representative, and you have Zoom alternatives. People use Jitsi, and I have, I believe, links to these. Yep. So there are links to Jitsi if you want. Signal is another one that is in the public domain. I believe it's shareware. And then Elon recommended freeconferencecall.com, which also works well, and I believe it has a video feature as well, so that it's just an alternative to Zoom. if you prefer one of these and you tell your clients, this is what I use, and you know how to work these and what to do with them, what their features are, by all means. So I use Zoom, and many people do, because Zoom has a lot of powerful features like the breakout rooms and polling, et cetera, and chat, that's all integrated, and that allows for kind of a seamless experience. But there are polling tools, and there are chat tools, and there are probably other software for breakout tools that you can find. So if you don't like Zoom and want to do it yourself, you're more than welcome. As long as you tell your clients what they should be experiencing, they won't know the difference unless they work for Zoom. So let's begin with pricing. Zoom costs approximately, if you get the professional version, $180 a year. So just to give you a sense that everything we're talking about is in the hundreds of dollars. And so you can probably, for $1,000 a year, set yourself up with enough technology, maybe excluding a laptop, maybe not, to allow yourself to run a virtual mediation practice. So I just wanted to give you that so you understood. So now to a question that Henry asked. So there were some issues with Zoom and privacy. And Motherboard reported, for example, on March 26th, that Zoom sends data to Facebook. And so if you click on this, now note the date. Today is April 2nd. This is March 26th. This is very recent. And let me tell you how quickly things move. If we click here, then we see something on March 27th, a day later, that says Zoom removes code that sends data to Facebook. So things happen now in a matter of hours. And when I was preparing this presentation last night, I went through all my links just to make sure that things were as I intended, even though I created the presentation very recently. And in fact, some things did change. Zoom, I will show you, Zoom changed their links, and I had to relink to something new that they had. So these things move very quickly, and Zoom apparently is pretty sensitive to these things. And I also have a link here to Zoom's privacy policy, which was updated March 29th now, about the use of technology. So these are real concerns, and because of how connected we are, and because of Zoom understands what position they're in, that they thought they were just a kind of a cool business collaboration software company, and now they've kind of become the Netscape, you know, or the Microsoft Explorer, if you remember the 90s, of the current age. They're trying to be sensitive to what's happening in the world. So these concerns are real, and it seems like Zoom is addressing them. And I would just want to make sure, Henry, if that answered your question.
Alex, we have another question from Cheryl.
Yeah, yes.
Cheryl Agris.
Oh, hi. I was just wondering about Skype, what your thoughts are. It was actually suggested by a potential party. So
yeah, Skype is fine. You know, I think they were Microsoft Suite now, and I use them sometimes when other people use Skype. So if someone tells me they'd like to Skype with me, I don't have a problem. But when I'm thinking about how to structure my own practice, I don't know that Skype has a breakout room feature. And I think for mediation, I would want to have that.
Okay. Alex, we also had a question earlier from Pierre about the possibility of creating a separate breakout room for counsel and parties, different from the plenary session room. If you could talk about that a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And different from the caucus room.
Absolutely, you can do that. Yeah. So it's really easy to do, and I'll show you a video on that. Because of the number of people, we have 302 people right now online. Zoom just isn't able to support that. But if it were, I would be able to do it. It's very easy to do. You click on a few. I'll show you a film on that very briefly. You'll get the sense of it. So
Alex, I'm sorry, it's Chuck. Just to follow up on that, you can't create a breakout room where the host is not present and just put an attorney and a client together.
No, you can create any breakout room with as many people. The only limitation is right now we have just a size limitation on the Zoom, what Zoom's able to handle. But in your mediation of fewer than 50 people, you can create as many breakout rooms as you want, up to 50. You can put one person in them, 2, 3. You can join them. You can go in and out of those rooms. So you have a lot of features, and they're building new ones.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so the next topic around Zoom is Zoom bombing. So I'm sure that many people have heard of this, and this has been an issue. So Zoom bombing, if those of you who don't know, is when someone who has nothing better to do decides to disrupt a meeting by joining a meeting and then taking it over, and or disrupting it in some other way. How can they do this? So one way is if, let me back up a little. Zoom was created as a in-group collaboration tool. In-group meaning the assumption was that people who know each other want to collaborate, but they may be in different areas. So how can we make it easy for them to share information? They did not think about how can we design a system that'll keep out bad people, because that's not why people get into this business. So as a result, they have erred on the side of sharing, and then their defaults were set up in such a way that allowed people to do nefarious things. So as an example, you forget when you set up a meeting to only limit screen sharing to a host. So you will leave a setting that says anyone can share a screen. If you're sending your link to known people, that's fine. But if you're sending your link out to the Twitter world and you post a tweet saying, let's have this collaboration on how we can help each other, everyone join, because Zoom can handle it. People see that tweet, they join. If you don't have any admission policy, like a waiting room where we ask you to register for that reason, if you don't have those issues, then people come in, you don't know who they are, and then they start either by taking over, or if you don't know how to mute them, they will just unmute themselves and speak over everyone, or they will post a background that's disruptive, et cetera, et cetera. So those are all the kinds of things that can happen. And the only thing you need to do to deal with that is set up the settings correctly. So as a Zoom host, you need to know what to click as a default. And that's one of the reasons why we asked everyone to register with Wild Apricot with ACRGNY, and then again with Zoom, so that Zoom knows who you are, because we wanted to avoid this issue of people getting in and us not knowing who they were. Zoom has a blog on this. They have some guidelines for what you want of how to, how to restrict people from doing things you don't want them to do, and you're welcome to read that as well. I don't think of it as a big deal, because as long as you know how to handle Zoom, and if you have a mediation with 10 people, let's say, chances are they're paying you for your time, they're not there to disrupt the meeting.
Alex, a question came in on how to share documents in the room. Did you want to cover that later, or as part of your not sharing the screen message that you just gave?
Yeah, I can talk about it briefly. I think I have a video on how to share the screen. The way you would typically share documents is by displaying a document in your window and then sharing that window with the other people. You can also do it through a file share service that Zoom has, but I don't think it's necessary in the context of a mediation. What you really want to do is display a document, or you can display a Google document if you want, that people can edit online. So you would have a situation where if I wanted to do that, I would create, for example, right now, I would go and I would create a Google Doc here. I would then share that, because I'm sharing my screen, and you would be able to see, and as I am typing in a document, you are able to see what I am doing. And then if we were in a mediation, you can say, I object to that term, change that hello to hi, etc. And that's a very easy way to collaborate. Good. Other questions?
Cheryl Agris has her hand up again. Cheryl, you might be on mute.
Oh, yeah, no, it was just the same question. So somehow it got repeated. So
oh, okay.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what's under the hood with Zoom. So people asked about how to change the backgrounds. So this is the place where I want to talk about that. There are 3 flavors of Zoom. There's the web version, the desktop, and the phone. They have similar functions, but not every flavor has the same exact functions. So for example, you can start a meeting from your phone or your desktop or the web, but you can only upload the background using the desktop version. So what you need to do is download this desktop client from the Zoom site, zoom.us. Of course, it's available for Android. It's available for Windows. It's available for iOS. I'm sure it's available for Linux as well. So generally, the way I use it is I use the web version for scheduling meetings, the desktop for running meetings, and my phone for participating in meetings. That's how I use it, but you can explore it yourself. Just know that these things aren't always aligned in terms of their features. So if you can't figure out how to do something in one version of it, you might think about, let me try if I can find this on the other flavor of Zoom.
Alex, do you mind if it's Chuck? If I could just, because we have people with different levels of sophistication about computer technology. When Alex is talking about a client, he's not talking about the people we work with. A client software is a small piece of software you put on your local computer, which is designed to work directly with the remote computer called a server. So that thing that you download you could think of it as an app for your computer.
Right, like Word, like Excel. So, thanks.
Walter Ruby has raised his hand.
Okay. Can you hear me? So, Alex, I just wanted to ask one question. In terms of your background, where I see this incredible, office, home, whatever it is. I'm not, and I understand you showed earlier that in fact that's not really where you are.
Right.
The question, I'm just wondering, does that give any kind of a false understanding to people? I mean, is there an ethical question about that?
I think it's
and I'm raising this as a general question. It seems to present you as, a very wealthy person. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but I'm just curious about some of those thoughts.
Right, yeah, well, that's why I wanted to share with you where I was really coming from, so you have that sense, an idea. It's up to you what you want to have. I picked this because if you're curious as to my reasoning, I picked it because I think it looks calming, it looks nice, it looks nicer to me anyway than the background, the white sort of background that I have, although it may not make a difference once you get used to it. So I will just show you that for my presentations, I use this one. For my mediations, I use more that one, a more relaxed approach. And I'll just continue with this if that's easier. But I do it for those reasons. You have an option as to what you want to use for yours or nothing at all. It's a fair question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Others?
Alex, there was a question about if you could repeat how you use each of the 3 different Zoom platforms and what you use them for.
Yeah, so the web I typically use to schedule meetings, and I also have, when I record, like today we're recording this, so the recording will be on the cloud, so I'll be able to access that recording via the web. The desktop is what I use to launch meetings. So I launched my desktop and then I clicked on Run Meeting and this came up. And then when I'm on the road and I'm participating in meetings, I often use my phone because my phone has a pretty good camera so I can be seen. And if I turn my camera off, I can just have my earbuds and I can participate. And that gives me more flexibility. That's just how I use it. Great.
Alex, it's about 9:40.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so let's move forward to Zoom features for mediators. So these are the things that I want to discuss about what you can use. Oh, if you can just mute everyone, I think we have some background noise. What you as a mediator can use to make the most of Zoom. And so there are 6 things that are helpful. Scheduling, multiple ways of connecting, the waiting room, screen sharing, breakout rooms, and the chat function. So I'm going to play this video, and these videos are short, so it'll give you a quick sense of how
scheduling a meeting from the Zoom web portal is quick and easy. From the Meetings tab, click the Schedule a New Meeting button. You're able to change the topic of that meeting, in addition to the date, the time, and the duration of that meeting. If it needs to occur frequently, you're able to set this as a recurring meeting and change how often it will occur. You're also able to change settings like generating a unique one-time 9-digit meeting ID or using your personal meeting ID. You're able to require a meeting password and change the video default settings for both the host and the participants in your meetings. You're also able to go further and enable join before host, muting participants upon entry, and the waiting room feature. Once you've scheduled the meeting, you're able to add it to your Google, Outlook, or Yahoo calendar, or scroll down and copy the invitation so that you can paste it and share it with anyone that will need to join your session.
So that is what it takes to actually set up a meeting. As you can see, it's very easy. It takes a little while to figure out what all the little checkboxes do. But once you know that, the actual scheduling is feather light. I want to show you one other video, which is around scheduling using Google, the Google Suite, which is why I like it.
Now that you're logged in, you can make any Google appointment a Zoom meeting with a single click. Create a new appointment in the Google Calendar. First, give your meeting a title and set the date and time or repeat recurrences. Next, simply click Make it a Zoom meeting to populate your link to join and meeting information. Add your meeting participants and conference rooms and edit the description as needed. To start the scheduled meeting as the host, simply open the calendar appointment and use the same link to join.
Okay, so this is why I like to integrate Zoom with my Google Suite, because what I'm actually able to do when I set up Zoom meetings is from my calendar, I just click on Make it a Zoom meeting, and that link goes directly to the participants and my invitees to the meeting with instructions on how to join. So it's really very easy. There's not a lot of overhead at all once you set up this function.
Alex, can you address a question from Glenn Dornfield, who said that he'd heard it's a best practice not to use your unique meeting ID number for privacy concerns?
Yes, great question. So Google, when you set up Google has two ways of creating these IDs. It gives you a static ID that you can, for example—
Alex, you're saying Google. Did you mean Zoom?
Sorry, Zoom. Thank you, Chuck. Sorry. Zoom allows you to create either a static ID, which could be your phone number, 555-1212, 212-555-1212. And if you do that, then that's a way for you to know that anytime you have a meeting or anytime you want to talk to, let's say, someone who's well known to you, your spouse, maybe your child, and so on, then that would be the meeting ID that is always there you can use. But that's a security risk. So when creating public meetings with things you're certainly putting out on Twitter, or things with large groups, or things with business contacts, you want to have an auto-generated link each time. And the reason for that is, if you use your static link, then as far as Zoom is concerned, you're running one single meeting that spans 3 months or 3 years, that pauses and then restarts again. So anyone who knows that ID can anytime join that meeting. So if that's what you want, for some things you might want that, then that works really well. But if you're using it professionally with different clients for different mediations, most certainly you want to have an auto-generated ID, not the same static ID. Thank you for the question.
So we have some hands up from Lou.
Sure. So let me just maybe cover, I won't play any more videos. I just want to cover some of the under the hood pieces with Google.
Alex, there are a couple of questions. Are you up for them now? Lou Blanchard and then Richard Lutringer.
Let me just hold these questions. I want to go through without playing this because I see we're at 15 minutes. So I'll just share with you briefly the things that I think are important for mediators to know about Zoom, and then I'll take all questions.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so you have multiple ways of connecting. This is another advantage of Zoom, that for a person who has video abilities, they click on the link and they show up. For a person who is remote and doesn't have video abilities, they can dial in and experience the session as a conference call. And I think in the mediation context, that flexibility is really helpful. I won't go through meeting controls. And I won't go through sharing a screen. We've seen how that's done. You can have breakout rooms, and the breakout rooms, I think, is helpful for people to see, just so you have a sense of what it is.
Hey everyone, Farah from Zoom here. On this brief video, we're going to show you how you can leverage our breakout room feature to take a large meeting or virtual classroom and split it up into smaller groups or sessions. You'll see that I have already enabled the breakout room feature, which you can find in your settings along the bottom. And that breakout room button will actually be right here. This is a button that only your hosts or co-hosts will be able to see. And right now we don't have a co-host in the session. If I manage my participants, I can hover over Catherine, for example, to make her a co-host. So she'll see this button now as well. When we're ready to split the group into smaller sessions, I can easily click this button to get a pop-up window asking me how many rooms I'd like to assign out and how many participants per room. For this example, it's recommending, since there are 6 people, we can split it up into 2 rooms. I can do this automatically or manually. So if we click on the automatic button, it'll create.
And just to let you know that for mediations, you want to do it manually because you want to be thoughtful about who goes into which room. For a training context, you can have automatic breakout rooms, just randomly group people together.
It'll generate those breakout rooms for us. Certainly, if there's anyone I want to swap out, maybe I want to move Michael to the other room, I can exchange him for a different participant. Once I'm ready to open all rooms, I'll click this Open All Rooms button, and our participants will be able to join the sessions that we've created for them. So we'll slowly see those people join. One thing that's really important to note is that as a host or a co-host, you can actually hop between the different rooms to talk to the participants. You can see here I have the join button. Now everybody's left to go to the rooms. I can broadcast a message to everybody and say, wrapping up in 1 minute. And this will broadcast the message. And then I can close the rooms, which gives them a 1-minute timer to rejoin our session. We'll give everybody a second to rejoin, and I'll show you 1 or 2 additional features with breakout rooms.
Okay, so you can watch the video on your own and learn about other features, but that's the one I wanted you to see, that it's easy once you have it set up to manually assign people to different rooms. You can name rooms however you want, plaintiff, defendant, party 1, party 2, whatever makes sense for you. And then you can assign people to those rooms, and then you can tell them when it's time to bring everyone back. You can go from one room to another. And so it's the same functionality as if you were in a different physical room where you'd be walking in the hallway back and forth. Okay, a little bit about chat. So one of the things you can do with Zoom is you can chat with people privately or publicly, and you can download those chats at the end of the session. Zoom automatically downloads that for you, so you can actually see the record of the chat. You can prevent participants from downloading their chats. In a mediation, that might be important. And you as the mediator can decide that you are going to dispose of that chat, but you have a record of it if you need it. And that actually might be helpful to memorialize certain things.